The knock came just as the rain began to whisper against the windows, a quiet sound that somehow carried the weight of something unexpected. Elira had been setting out spare blankets for her friend Mara, who was staying the night after a long week, when the sound echoed again, firm, steady, and completely out of place at that late hour. She paused, one hand still holding a folded blanket, a strange flicker of curiosity moving through her. Mara looked up from the couch, brows lifting. "That's odd," she murmured. "No one usually comes by this late." Elira wasn't nervous, just puzzled. Their neighborhood was calm, almost predictable. Anyone visiting past evening would normally message ahead. So when she opened the door and found a tall figure standing beneath the dim porch light, she blinked in surprise. It was Mara's brother, Halden, someone Elira had only met a few times before at family gatherings. Always polite, always reserved, always courteous in that steady, older sibling way. And tonight, he looked tired. Not troubled, not dramatic, just worn in the way someone looks after a long drive and too many unanswered calls. "Mara," he said, offering a small nod towards his sister before turning to Elira with the same respectful greeting he always used. "Good evening. I'm sorry to arrive unannounced." Elira stepped aside immediately. "Come in. It's raining harder now." That was true. The gentle whisper had grown into a steady fall, filling the quiet with a soft, rhythmic backdrop. Halden walked inside with a grateful breath, brushing droplets from his jacket. Mara stood, her expression shifting into concern, but never anything more. The two siblings had always had a calm, steady dynamic. No dramatic scenes, just honest family care. "What happened?" Mara asked. "You look exhausted." Halden offered a light, reassuring shrug. "Car trouble. The engine overheated a few streets away, and the nearest repair shop is closed until morning. I thought I'd walk here rather than wait roadside." That was all. Simple, ordinary, entirely reasonable. And yet Elira felt something in the air shift. Not in a romantic way, not in a dramatic way, but in that unmistakable sense that the night had taken a turn no one saw coming. She gestured him toward the dining table. "Sit. I'll make tea." That was what she did best, offering warmth, offering steadiness, offering something to anchor people when the day had been too long. While she boiled water, she listened as Halden explained the situation. No details that carried tension, just the logical steps of a day that hadn't gone as planned. Mara listened carefully, giving practical suggestions, the kind siblings naturally exchanged when life got messy. Elira brought the tea to the table, placing 3 cups gently in front of them. The room felt peaceful, held together by the soft glow of the overhead light and the rain tightening its rhythm outside. "I'm sorry to interrupt the evening," Halden said quietly. "You didn't interrupt anything," Elira replied, meaning it. "Your family to Mara, and anyone connected to her is welcome here anytime." Mara smiled at that. "You see? I told you Elira wouldn't mind." The rain suddenly thudded louder against the window, a deep roll of thunder following moments later. Not frightening, just enough to make all 3 glance instinctively toward the sound. The world outside felt shut away, distant, sealed behind sheets of falling water. Elira took a sip of tea and felt a gentle sense of responsibility settle inside her. It wasn't dramatic, and it wasn't emotional closeness, just the natural instinct to help someone who clearly needed a moment of rest. Halden's shoulders eased a little. The warmth of the tea, the calm of the room, and the familiar presence of his sister seemed to lift some of the weight from him. As the rain continued, Elira took a breath, sensing that this unexpected arrival would ripple through the night in ways none of them could predict. Not romantically, not dramatically, just significantly, in a quiet, human, wholesome way. And right before the part of the night that would change everything, she offered a gentle remark with a smile, following her usual narration style without thinking. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. But even as she said it, a sudden noise outside made all 3 freeze. A sound sharp enough, strange enough, that the warm atmosphere shifted in an instant. Something, or someone, was at the end of the driveway. The night was no longer simple. For a moment, none of them moved. The sound came again, not loud, not frightening, but clear enough to cut through the rain. A soft metallic thud, as if something had toppled over near the driveway. Alira set her teacup down, steady and composed. Nothing about the moment felt dangerous. It simply felt strange. Mara stepped closer to the window, lifting the curtain just slightly, while Halden remained seated, listening intently. "I can't see much," Mara murmured. "It's so dark out there." Alira joined her, peering through the glass. The rain had turned the outside world into a blur of shapes and shadows, making everything appear softer yet harder to recognize. The porch light cast a small circle of clarity, but beyond that, the yard was murky under the storm. "Could it be your car?" Mara asked her brother. Halden shook his head. "I left it halfway down the road. Whatever that was, it wasn't near it." They waited, listening. The rain thinned slightly, becoming a steadier pattern, and the distant hum of wind brushed past the house. Nothing else moved. No footsteps, no voices, no follow-up sound. "It's probably the garbage bin," Alira said gently. "The wind pushes it sometimes." Halden nodded in agreement. That makes sense. It felt like a normal noise. The tension eased. Not dramatic tension, just the natural alertness anyone feels when the night shifts unexpectedly. They all stepped away from the window as Alira turned on the porch light to check from a safer angle. The illuminated space showed nothing unusual. With that small mystery settled, they returned to the table. Alira warmed the teapot again, feeling responsible for keeping the night calm and grounded. "Thank you for letting me stay here until morning," Halden said sincerely. "I'll arrange a tow as soon as the shop opens." "You don't have to rush," Alira replied, keeping her tone even and warm. "Weather like this tends to delay things anyway." Mara leaned back in her chair. "Honestly, it's almost a relief to have something shift the routine a little. This whole week felt strangely long." Alira nodded at that. She understood the feeling well, the kind of week where every day felt heavier than it should, even when nothing dramatic happened. Life simply had its seasons of fatigue. Halden reached for his tea again, and for the first time since he had arrived, his expression softened with genuine ease. Seeing siblings interact so naturally brought a quiet comfort to the home. Alira treasured moments like this, the kind that reminded her how ordinary connection could settle a restless day. No romantic undertones, no dramatic emotional closeness, just the simple presence of people caring for each other in life's practical ways. After a while, Mara stood to fetch her overnight bag, leaving Halden and Alira at the table. Alira began gathering the used cups, careful not to crowd the moment. She wasn't one to hover or fuss. She simply liked things tidy. "Let me help with that," Halden said politely. "You're the guest," she replied, smiling lightly. "Rest while you can." He respected that and leaned back, closing his eyes briefly. Not in a weary collapse, just a small exhale, the kind people take when they realize they finally have a safe place to pause. Alira placed the cups in the sink and returned just as Mara came back, her hair wrapped in a towel from earlier. "So," Mara said, sitting again, "we should sort out where everyone is sleeping." Alira nodded thoughtfully. "The guest room is ready for you, Mara. Halden, you're welcome to take the sofa. It's comfortable enough for one night." "That works perfectly," Halden said. The storm softened outside, almost as if taking a breath with them. The worst of it had passed, leaving only the gentle rainfall tapping the windows. Alira always loved that sound. It made the world feel smaller, safer, wrapped in a temporary cocoon. Just as the calm settled deeper into the room, another interruption arrived, this time from Alira's phone vibrating on the counter. She glanced at the screen and froze. Her neighbor had sent a message with a picture attached. A picture of something lying near the end of Alira's driveway. Not a person, not an animal, but something that unmistakably did not belong there. Her breath caught, not out of fear, but out of pure confusion. "How did this get outside my house?" she whispered. The night had just shifted again. Alira stared at the photo glowing on her screen, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. It showed a small, weather-worn wooden box sitting near the edge of her driveway, half soaked from the rain and angled slightly as if someone had placed it there gently, not dropped, not tossed, but set down with intention. "Did someone leave a package for you?" Mara asked, stepping closer. Alira shook her head slowly. "No one said anything. and I wasn't expecting anything at all. Halden rose from his seat, the steady, practical part of him emerging. What does the message say? Elira opened it. Her neighbor, Mr. Dalmont, had typed only a brief line. Saw this outside your driveway while I was closing my gate. Thought you should know. Nothing more, no assumptions, no warnings, just the simple courtesy he was known for. Halden studied the photo over her shoulder. It doesn't look dangerous, just misplaced. Mara nodded. Maybe someone dropped it while passing by? Elira considered that. The box looked old, weathered, and strangely delicate for being outside in a storm. She placed the phone down and exhaled. I should bring it inside before the rain ruins it completely. Halden and Mara both agreed, calmly, sensibly. There was no rush of tension, only the natural instinct to handle something unusual with care. Elira slipped on her raincoat and grabbed an umbrella. Halden offered to walk with her, not out of dramatic protectiveness, but out of simple courtesy, the kind anyone would show in a stormy night. Outside, the rain was lighter, more like a steady drizzle. The porch light created a small halo around them as they stepped into the yard. The night air felt cool and earthy, carrying the scent of wet grass. There, Halden said quietly, pointing toward the edge of the driveway. The box sat exactly where the photo showed it, untouched. Elira crouched beside it, lifting it gently with both hands. The wood felt smooth but old, the surface etched with faint patterns that had faded with time. It wasn't heavy, surprisingly light, in fact. I have never seen anything like this, she murmured. Let's get inside, Halden replied. It's too damp out here to inspect anything properly. They returned to the warm glow of the living room, closing the door against the soft rainfall. Mara joined them immediately, her expression curious but calm. Elira placed the box on the dining table, laying a towel beneath it to keep the wood from slipping. Up close, it looked even older, the designs carved into it forming a swirling pattern, almost like vines circling each corner. What do you think it is? Mara asked. No idea, Elira admitted, but it doesn't feel like something someone would drop accidentally. It might be a mistake, Halden suggested. Maybe someone intended to leave it at a different house. That's possible, Elira said softly. She touched the lid. It wasn't locked, just sealed with a small clasp. Before opening it, she paused, not out of fear, but thoughtful hesitation. This thing had appeared on her driveway during a storm, on a night already full of surprises. She wanted to approach it gently. With both siblings watching quietly, she unclasped the lid and lifted it. Inside, wrapped in cloth, lay a stack of old letters, the paper yellowed at the edges, tied with a thin piece of faded ribbon. Beside the letters rested a tiny metal locket, shaped like a teardrop, its surface subtly engraved with a pattern that matched the box. Mara breathed out slowly. These look very old. Elira nodded, lifting the bundle gently. The ribbon felt fragile beneath her fingers. She set it down carefully, respecting its age. Are there any names on them? Halden asked. Elira untied the ribbon with patient hands. The first envelope was addressed in handwriting so delicate it looked almost like it might crumble. But the name written on it made her heart pause in a stunned, quiet way. Not dramatic, not emotional in the forbidden sense, just the pure shock of recognition. It was addressed to her grandmother. A grandmother who had passed many years ago. A grandmother known for keeping almost no personal items from her youth. Mara's eyes widened softly. Elira, how would letters meant for your grandmother end up on your driveway tonight? I don't know, Elira whispered. I didn't even know these existed. She opened the first letter with care. The ink inside was faded, but still readable, and as the first lines came into view, her breath stilled again. Not from fear, not from emotion tied to anyone present, but from the realization that someone, somewhere, had carried a piece of her family's past to her door on this very night. She looked at Halden and Mara, steadying herself. There's something written here that changes what I thought I knew about her. And she knew, without question, they had only uncovered the beginning. Elira held the letter carefully, the fragile paper trembling only from its own age, not from any hint of dramatic emotion. She read the first few lines silently, her brows pulling together in steady concentration. Mara and Heldon waited with patient quiet, respecting the weight of old memories resurfacing. "It's written in her early handwriting," Elira said softly. "I've only ever seen a few samples of it, but this is definitely hers." Mara leaned closer, staying respectful of the space around the fragile paper. "What does it say?" Elira took a breath and began reading aloud, her voice gentle. "It talks about a time before she moved to this town. She mentions someone named Leora. It sounds like a friend she was very close to." "A childhood friend?" Mara asked. "Possibly," Elira replied, "but she never once mentioned anyone by that name, not in all the years I knew her." Heldon stepped nearer, his tone calm and practical. "Maybe these letters were stored away by someone connected to your grandmother's past, someone who only recently discovered them and wanted to return them to the family." "That would explain how they resurfaced," Mara said thoughtfully. Elira nodded slowly, tracing one finger lightly along the faded ink. "It could be. These letters look like they were kept in one place for decades." She moved to the next page, reading more. The content remained simple. Descriptions of early life, the difficulties of starting over in a new place, the hopes her grandmother carried during those years. Nothing scandalous, nothing romantic, nothing heavy. Just the honest reflections of a young woman writing to a trusted friend. "What if the box belonged to the family of this Leora?" Mara suggested. "Maybe someone found it during a move or clearing a house." "That would make sense," Heldon added. "Old belongings surface like that sometimes." The explanation felt reasonable, safe, grounded, but one part still puzzled Elira deeply. "The box itself," she murmured, touching the carved edges. "This design, I've seen something like it before." Mara tilted her head. "Where?" "In an old photograph," Elira said. "One my grandmother kept in her album. It showed her and a group of friends sitting under a large oak tree. One of them was holding a box with similar patterns." "Was the friend Leora?" Heldon asked. Elira thought carefully. "I don't know. My grandmother never labeled that photo." She reached for the locket next. It was small, cool to the touch, and surprisingly well preserved. She pressed the tiny clasp and it opened with a faint click. Inside was a miniature sketch, hand-drawn, delicate, of two women standing side by side. One of them was unmistakably her grandmother. The other must have been Leora. Mara exhaled softly. They must have been incredibly close friends. Elira closed the locket gently, treating it like something precious, yet steadying herself with calm. "I wish she had told me about this part of her life. She wasn't secretive, just quiet about her early years." "Some people don't revisit the past easily," Heldon said, his voice level, "especially if those years were complicated or held difficult changes." Elira took that in with slow understanding. Her grandmother had always focused on the present, on routine, on kindness. Perhaps these letters belonged to a chapter she simply never spoke about again. But one thing still didn't fit. "Why tonight?" Elira said aloud. "Why would these letters show up on my driveway tonight of all nights?" Mara looked toward the window thoughtfully. "Maybe someone found them recently, but didn't want to disturb you during the day. They might have placed them quietly and left." "That's possible," Elira agreed. But the unease was not fear, just the natural desire to understand something unexpected. Heldon rested a steady hand on the back of a chair. "You mentioned the photograph. Do you still have it?" "Yes, it's in the old album in my bedroom. Would it help to compare it with the sketch?" Elira nodded. "It might." She left the room briefly with a worn album wrapped in soft fabric. Its pages held decades of preserved moments, all neatly arranged by her grandmother's careful hands. She flipped through until she found the photograph, the one taken under the sprawling oak tree. 5 young women sat together, their smiles easy and bright. And in the center of the group, her grandmother held a box that looked almost identical to the one now sitting on the table. Mara leaned in softly. There it is, the same carvings. Heldon observed the photo with quiet focus. Then this box definitely belonged to that circle of friends. But something else caught Elira's eye, something small but impossible to miss. One corner of the photograph had been creased sharply, almost intentionally, drawing her attention to the edge of the frame, where another version of the same locket hung from one woman's neck. The woman who wasn't her grandmother. The woman who must have been Leora. which meant the locket in the box did not originally belong to her grandmother. Elira looked up slowly, realization dawning. These letters might not have been meant for me at all. And for the first time that night, she felt a quiet, steady certainty that someone out there still had a missing piece of this story and might come looking for it. Elira sat with the photo in one hand and the locket in the other, the two pieces fitting together like parts of a puzzle that had only now resurfaced. Mara and Halden waited quietly beside her, giving her space to process the unexpected connection without pressuring her for answers. "It makes sense," Elira said softly. "If this belonged to Leora, then the letters might have been her keepsakes, not my grandmother's." Mara nodded thoughtfully. "And someone may have found them recently, maybe after cleaning an old attic or sorting through a family home." Halden added, "If the belongings had no clear owner, they might have searched for your grandmother's name, discovered your house, and left them here with good intentions." Elira breathed in slowly, letting the explanation settle. It was simple, kind, and human, the sort of solution that didn't require mystery or drama, only the understanding that lives overlap in unexpected ways. But even with that clarity, she felt a gentle pull to honor what she had found. Not emotionally intense, not dramatic, just the steady sense of responsibility she always carried when something meaningful came into her hands. "I think I should read the rest of them," she said quietly, touching the stack of letters. "Not to intrude, but to understand." "Of course," Mara said. "They're part of your family's past now." Elira opened the next envelope and read silently. The letter described simple things: hopes for the future, plans that never fully unfolded, gratitude for friendship that stayed strong even across distance. Each letter echoed the same tone: warm, steady, truthful. Not romantic, not secretive, not dramatic. Just two young women holding on to friendship during changing seasons of life. When she finished the final letter, Elira exhaled slowly. "These show how much my grandmother relied on her friends during her early years. She wasn't alone when she came here. She had support. She had a circle." "That's beautiful," Mara murmured. Halden nodded. "People carried each other more quietly back then." Elira smiled gently. "Yes, and maybe these were lost during a move or left behind when someone passed. Someone must have found them while trying to preserve things." The explanation felt right. Not mysterious, just full of the quiet, unrecorded stories that live behind photographs and old letters. As she began placing the envelopes back into the box, her phone buzzed again. A new message from her neighbor. "If you're awake, I think the person who left the box came back. There's someone standing outside your gate." Elira felt her breath hitch in surprise. Not fear, not tension between anyone in her home, just the natural reaction anyone would have to unexpected news. She stood and moved towards the front window, Halden and Mara following behind. The rain had weakened to a thin drizzle, and the streetlights cast a soft glow over the quiet road. A figure stood at the gate, an older woman, holding an umbrella and a folder clutched gently to her chest. There was no threat in her posture, no urgency, only a hesitancy that came from someone unsure if they were welcome to approach. Elira opened the door just enough to speak out, keeping everything calm. "Hello? Can I help you?" The woman stepped slightly closer, her voice soft and steady. "I'm so sorry to disturb you at this hour. My name is Rowan. I believe something was delivered to your home earlier, something that may have belonged to my mother." Elira's heart shifted in quiet understanding. "Were you the one who left the wooden box?" The woman nodded. "I found it while cleaning my mother's belongings. I recognized some names, but I wasn't sure who it belonged to now. I didn't want to intrude, so I left it near your driveway, but then I realized I might need to explain." Elira stepped out onto the porch, maintaining a respectful distance. "Thank you for bringing it. I think this belonged to your mother's friend, my grandmother." Rowan's eyes softened with relief. Then it found the right hands. Elira invited her inside, not out of impulse, but from the graciousness she always extended to those who carried sincerity in their intentions. Mara and Halden greeted her warmly. Rowan stepped toward the table, her gaze landing immediately on the box, the letters, and the locket. These were my mother's cherished things, she whispered. She kept them safe all her life. Alira nodded, and she was deeply important to my grandmother. The woman's eyes grew damp, not from dramatic emotion, but simple human remembrance. She always spoke fondly of those days, Rowan said. She regretted losing touch when life moved too fast. Alira gently closed the box. Maybe it's time these memories are shared and honored by both families. Rowan smiled, grateful and steady. I would like that very much. The storm had passed now, leaving only the soft patter of fading rain. Inside the house, under warm light, two families connected, not through drama, not through tension, but through the quiet, wholesome rediscovery of a friendship that once meant everything to two young women long ago. And with that, the night that began with an unexpected arrival settled into something gentle, meaningful, and complete. A story not of mystery, but of remembrance, of kindness, of past lives woven into the present in the softest way. The night had changed everything in the most wholesome way possible.